Okay, so this video is an attempt to show how to change the battery in an Oculus Quest 2. Now, I'm not going to show everything. There are 3 videos on YouTube that show disassembly of the Quest 2. No need to repeat that stuff. I will put links to those in the bottom. There's also an ifixit.com page for disassembly of the Oculus Quest 2. Pardon the shaky camera, I'm holding my camera. But each one of those disassemblies are like complete disassemblies. They don't go after a specific thing. All of them show removing the fan, heatsink, and motherboard, which I don't believe is necessary just to change the battery. And I'll get into it when I show it. So what I'm going to do is, rather than repeat videos of how to take the front face off and how to take the back off and that kind of thing, I'm going to focus on exactly doing the minimal take apart to get at the battery. So, and a prime example, in their videos, they show unplugging this cable and saying this is the battery, but there's another cable here on this battery. None of them show exactly what that cable goes to at all, or how to unplug it. So when I get in there, I'll find out. But again, I'm not going to repeat. I'm going to give links. iFixit has a very good page, tells you to remove certain screws and what to do. As far as tools, I'm going to show you something. You need a number 2 Torx. I could not find any in a hardware store. The smallest they had was like a T4. Most of them only went down to T6. I had to order online. I'm not pimping this at all, but I ordered this kit online. It's got a bunch of different Phillips, Allens, all small, jeweler size. I think I paid $12 on eBay on that. Ask me in the comments if you want that exact set. But you need a number 2 Torx. I highly recommend it being magnetic, so you can pull the screws out without dropping them in. I think you're going to need tweezers for all the little tiny ribbon cables, a pry tool of some kind. I prefer plastic because there are snaps. You have to unsnap, a magnet to put the screws on, and something to put the screws in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the screw length with a set of calipers and write it down so I know what screws go where when I take them out. Some are longer and shorter than others. So I recommend you do the same thing, or keep the screws together, a little pile for the face, shield, so on and so forth. Let's see, what else can I say? Anyway, again, I'm not showing what other videos show. I'm going to refer you to those as I go. But I will show areas where I'm focusing strictly on what needs to be unplugged inside and what needs to be removed to get at the battery. And that's the prime focus of this video, okay? So with that, I'm going to get started and we'll go to town. Okay, so per the iFixit, there's 6 screws. There's 2 down here at the nose piece and 6 along the top. Is fairly easy. So that's the first step. I'm going to tell you right now, be careful when you pry this out. Mine came out pretty easy. I followed the iFixit instructions and pried starting at the bottom around the edges. Came right out. There's a little connector right here. And the iFixit page doesn't show a close-up, but there's a little black. You have to flip up this little black lever right here. Okay, with a pair of tweezers. And mine's in the up position right now, or maybe it's in the down. I can't quite tell. And then you unplug this ribbon cable. Now, it's not a simple unplug. There was double-sided tape right here. Whoops. Right here. And you can see my double-sided tape got a little compromised now because some pulled with the cable, some didn't. But on the cable, I'm going to show you, there's 2 little tongs here. Let me get this in my hand. Kind of hard to hold the cable. See the 2 little tongs on each side here? I put the tweezers in between and just kind of pried it out. I tried to lift it a little with the tweezers to undo the sticky tape, and I got it. But there, like I said, it kind of compromised the tape. Anyway, the tape will be fine. I'm not worried that there's a little bit missing. And by the way, this is easy enough. The idea is that with vibration and everything, it won't come out, but I don't think it'll come out anyway. So anyway, that's the first step. Again, I'm showing detail that really isn't shown by the iFixit article. It talks about the flipping the little bar up, that little black bar down there. and flipping it up and then pulling the cable. It doesn't talk about the tape, so I'm giving you the detail. Okay, next up, and you're not going to be able to see down in there unless I shine a light. There are the two screws you got to remove to get at the front panel. Now, this is the battery pack up here, all right, in this black box. It's at the top of the headset. The screw you want is all the way down, and it looks like there's a little tang that sticks out from the battery pack on both sides. It is not this metal one. It's not this one on this metal part that holds the IP, that one. It's not that one. That holds the IPD rail. So you don't take that one out. It's way down in here, all right? And then there's 3, 1, 2, 3 that you take out, and then we'll take the front cover off. I'll let you know how much prying it took to get the front cover off. Okay, just a little tip. The 2 top screws up here near the battery pack are very close to the battery pack. This new tool, by the way, they're Phillips. They're not T2, so they're a fine Phillips. I couldn't get in there with this tool. It's too fat. So thank goodness I had a couple of jeweler screwdrivers. These got in there no problem. Helps if they're magnetic. This one wasn't. So once I got them loose, I used the other tool to at least get in there with the magnetism and pull the screws out. So at the top there are 2 Phillips screws that are 7.75 millimeters long. Now we'll go at the bottom ones, which are over here, right there, and in the center right here. All right, so I thought I'd touch on details you should know that aren't shown in those other take apart videos, things that'll be gotchas like the screwdriver. So be prepared. Make sure you have a jeweler screwdriver of some kind that's Phillips, that's small, and can get on those screws. I tried to use this tool here, but the Phillips was too big for those screws. So I had to dig out one of my jeweler screwdrivers. So make sure you have one of those. If you buy a magnetic tool like this part here is too thick to allow you to get down in there on that screw. So just an FYI. Okay, so once the screws are out, the front panel was pretty easy to remove. I was almost able to do it with just using my fingernails and prying. Down here on the bottom, it was a little tougher, these clamps, so I just used my little pick. But, I mean, the front came off very easily. By the way, a nice little trick without a whole lot of disassembly, if you ever want to remove the cover and decal it or paint it while it's not on the unit. There you go. So we're going to put that aside. And here we go, just like all the other videos and iFixits. This is where I'm going to change because almost all of them have you removing the Bluetooth antenna here, which I will remove because we have to get at some cables. Shows you removing the fan, the heat sink, and then the main motherboard. There's no reason to unplug cameras to take out what we're going to call the mid-frame or the frame of the electronics to come out of the case. So what I'm going to do next is figure out one of the main things that I see hanging up is the Wi-Fi antenna comes around here, and that's it right there. And it goes under the main board and plugs in the main board here. Sure, you can unplug it just by removing the fan. You don't have to remove the heatsink. But you're not going to fish the Wi-Fi antenna because it's clipped onto the frame under this motherboard. I am hoping that we have enough slack and whatnot, because I saw in another video where someone had the main frame out, or in the video, with this wire still connected. So I believe the person in that take apart, and the links will be below in my video, took the main frame out before they decided to pull the board. So that's why I believe it's possible. So again, we don't have to unplug cameras. We simply need to unplug any cables that have things attached to the frame, like the speakers, the Wi-Fi antenna, whatever else needs to be unplugged from the main board to get the frame out. And this is what I'm going to be doing discovery on my own, using the other videos to kind of watch. But the first thing we will be doing is removing this bracket and unplugging the battery. And the reason I say that is you've got a battery that, even though the unit's not on, it's still applying power somewhere through this board, right? Because it's the power on switch is, it's a momentary switch. So that means the board senses when you hit it. That means there's power. So the safest thing to do now is unplug that battery, which again is under this. And the iFixit shows you what screws to remove and how to unplug the battery. No big deal. I'm a little concerned on the batteries, this middle cable in the battery, which no one talks about, even the iFixit. So I'm not even sure. Maybe that's not connected. I don't know. We're going to find out. Maybe it's a balance port. I don't know. But for the lithium battery. But bottom line, we're going to unplug the battery next. So we'll go ahead and do that and take a look. One of the things I want to show you is to remove the battery clip. So it's 3 screws. And I'm going to write down the lengths because they're different. Pardon me. This is a little difficult to hold the phone and do this. But in order to get it out, there was there's an antenna right here, and it's clipped under this clip, which is part of the battery. So you have to take your tweezers and slip this antenna wire out from this clip before it'll make this loose, and then you're going to slide it from underneath the antenna wire. We're not going to unplug the antenna wire. We could take the fan off and unplug it, but again, I'm trying to do minimal. If I have to go and do that, I will. But I believe I can get this out without messing with that. You just need to unclip it from the battery clip that it's clipped in. Funny thing I noticed was the insulation. This is going to be, since it's an antenna, it's a shielded wire. But this is going to be, you notice the insulation missing? I think they wanted that grounded to this battery clip. So when you put it back in, make sure that happens. I did not remove that insulation. When I unclipped it, I noticed, oh, come on, focus camera. I noticed it was not on, the insulation was missing right there. So I think they do that on purpose to ground that antenna wire on the shielding. Anyway, let's continue on. Okay, so sorry for the jiggly video, but it's hard to do this. I should have got a tripod or something. I did unplug the cable because I think I'm going to need to anyway. But anyway, you just grab it with some tweezers right behind where it's on the board, and you just lift up, all right? It's just a snap-on thing. I could have got the bracket out without it, but it was getting a little fiddly, and I noticed this wire goes down inside, so there's a good chance that the patch antenna is stuck to the case, and it needs to be unplugged anyway. So I did go ahead and do that. When you put it back on, you'll simply be snapping it on. There's no screwing or anything. It's a snap-on connector. Just be careful that you line it up straight, and there's a little pin inside that goes in a hole on the jack. Make sure you don't bend it. So you want it, when you snap it on, you want to be nice and level. Snap straight down. All right, so now we have access to the battery plug, which is right here. It looks like looking at the battery plug, and that's why there's a bracket over it. You simply lift it up, so there's no clasp or anything. It just plugs, just plugs straight down on, and looks like there's some double-sided tape or some foam, but that's why it has a clamp over it to keep it secure so it doesn't pop off. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and unplug the battery, and we'll continue on. Okay, Bluetooth antenna I'm going to remove just because I want to be able to see things. So I'm going to cover the screws. This is mainly for me. But if you'll notice, there's 4 these small screws, 2 long screws, and 2 slightly larger diameter screws. So where do they go? Pardon that. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, nothing was here. So the 2 long ones, the 2 fatter ones, and the 4. Anyway, just wanted to do that mainly for me, so I knew where they went, but also for you in case you forgot. Okay, so it's trying to determine what needs to be unplugged, because some things stay with the case. For instance, here's the right speaker. You've got this panel here, which is the power switch, and I'll show you that cable. You've got 2 antennas over here. Or I'm sorry, 1 antenna. This black strip is one of the patch antennas. That's just some copper. It's not an antenna, it's just some copper plate. Not sure why that's there and why the wire goes through there, but we're not going to mess with that. We're going to leave that stuck on there. Over on this side, you've got another speaker. You've got the power earphone jack and power jack. And that's all I see over on this side. Well, there's another antenna up here, actually. And I think there might be, no, that's the ribbon cable. So there's an antenna over here. So on this side, now remember, I'm flipping it over this way. So that 1 patch antenna up here I just showed, that we've already unplugged that. Pardon the Bluetooth thing here. So this cable is the power jack and earphone jack. So we need to unplug that. This right here is the speaker for this side. So this is the only things that need to be unplugged on this side. On this side, we've got the other speaker jack. We've got this little cable right here. This is the power button, okay? And then you've got the Wi-Fi patch antenna, and that looks like all there. Now, again, we can't unplug this Wi-Fi patch antenna, and I don't want to pry it off of there either at all. So the idea is I don't want to unplug this because it does require removing the fan, the heat sink, and the motherboard. So I'm hoping I can do it without it. Again, I'm going to show you this picture right here. You can see that the Wi-Fi antenna is still attached when iFixit posted this picture. So I think there's enough slack when they did this that they didn't remove the cable from the motherboard or from the mainframe, and we're able to swing that out. And this is where they're showing you removing the speaker. And that's what we want to do so that we can get at the battery up there. We want to be able to swing this out and then unscrew the battery without messing with that. I'm a little worried though, as the battery cable runs underneath the main board. So I don't know what it's going to take to fish that cable. Let me show you the battery. This cable, and it looks like there's sticky tape too, possibly, because there it is. So if I was to hold that battery in there, this part right here runs under the main board. I'm hoping it's not stuck down and that I can get it out without removing the main board, but we are going to have a look. But you see this foam pad here? It may be impossible to get this out. Now, I don't care about destroying the old battery, but feeding this back in underneath the main board might be a problem. So, geez, I really don't want to take off the main board because I don't want to deal with thermal paste and everything and putting the heatsink and everything back on. So we're going to see what we can do, but it's not looking good at this point. I'm hoping we can get that out of there, but only way to find out is let's get all this stuff unplugged that I just talked about. Speaker, power button, can't undo that antenna, speaker, earphone jack and power. There was another the patch antenna up here, which I already unplugged earlier. And hopefully we can get this out of there and see what we got. Stay tuned. Okay, speaker wires, getting them out. They don't pull out like this. You simply get underneath them with the tweezers and lift up from the back, from back here. I can't really show that. Then they are tucked in a little slot hole right here, so tuck them out because when we remove it, we want the speakers free. Same on the other side. So again, you come from behind, underneath the wires that are sticking out with your tweezers and just lift up and they come out. They do not plug straight in like you'd think a normal jack would. If you look at the jack, if you look at the plug, it's going to be hard for me to focus on that. It just sets down in there. All right, it's a different kind of plug, right? You can see the snap-in pins. Man, wish I could get a tripod here. Anyway, hope that makes sense. But that's what you do. You do not pull back on them because you're not going to do it. The connector doesn't even work that way. They're a lift-up connector. All right, so the other ones, you just lift these little tabs on each one of these connectors. If there's something that I need to come back and show you, I will. But let's get the other ribbon cables unplugged. Okay, just to talk about the remaining connectors. This little, for the power button, you come from behind here and lift up on the black thing. It'll flip right up. You don't try it from this side. You try it from in the back of the connector. So you just, little tweezers, flip it up. It is sticky glued onto the frame, as you see. So there's, if you look at the ribbon cable, there's little tabs. Pardon me. There's little tabs on each side. It's impossible. Little tabs on each side that you can use to, like right here, these tabs on each side, that you can use to take your tweezers and back it out once you've got that black clip lifted up. And it is glued here. Over here, this was a lift out connector, so you just lift it up and out. Be careful putting them in. Make sure you get them seated when you put it back on, because these are delicate. If you do not seat these right before trying to push down, you will jack up the connectors. Very similar to a cell phone. And it was taped down over here. Just carefully, slowly lift it up. And I believe this is all the cables. So speakers, power button. Still got the Wi-Fi antenna over here. We got speaker. We've got antenna down there. We've got the power jack and earphone jack. The Bluetooth I didn't really need to remove, but we're going to see. I've still got the screws out. And now we're going to go per the iFixit and remove the screws that hold the frame into the case. All right. And let's see. This is going to be the moment of truth, seeing if we can get the battery without removing the board. Okay, we are going to have to remove at least the fan shroud. So one screw here, it's a Phillips, and it is 4.4 millimeter long, and then one right here in the center, which is a T2, and it's 3.4 millimeter long. This little LED sensor, not sure what it does because it's under the cover. Quite interesting. But that just pops off. So you get your tweezers right underneath it, lift up, and you see these two little pins. It just pops off, and it pops in those holes, okay? So that's how you get that little LED and ribbon cable off. So we're going to go ahead and lift the fan out now. It comes as a whole unit, plugs in right here, so we will be unplugging the fan right there. It's interesting, mine is separate wires, where in the video it showed more of a 4-wire kind of cable. Anyway, so I'm going to unplug that and remove the fan, because I now know that this, on the battery, I now know where this goes. See, I'm going to tell you something. Well, first let me talk about this. So that little center ribbon cable plugs onto the motherboard, all right? I don't know, some battery monitor, temp monitor, don't know. Definitely not a main power supply, but balance connector for charging, battery health, not quite sure. But anyway, so we do have to remove the fan. Hoping not to remove the motherboard and heatsink. I'm going to tell you something. When you start looking at these other videos and whatnot, I notice when they've got the fan and they go to pull the motherboard, they've already had it apart because the ribbon cable for the battery is not there. So what happens is they show unplugging the battery, they show removing this, the heatsink, and by the time they're fiddling with the motherboard, all of a sudden, magically, the cable's gone. So they took it apart and partially reassembled to show more take apart. So I still don't know how this cable's routed underneath, and we're going to find out. But, you know, I cannot find a picture or anywhere in a video that shows how this is routed because of the way these other people have actually disassembled, reassembled, and then disassembled again, and they left out steps. All right, so I'm going to show you the steps best I can. So the good news is, let's see if I can show you here, the battery cable's right here. So I was able to, it's slightly glued, so basically what you do is, let me get this stuff out of the way, is I can show you sticking it back in. So you slightly move it under the motherboard, and there's a little bit of sticky to it. So, but I was able to pull it right. I'm not going to do it with one hand here, but I was easily able to pull this out from underneath the motherboard without removing the motherboard. So that is good news. We're going to be able to do this. Again, there's some sticky glue, but it's not too bad at all. Again, I'm not going to fumble trying to get it back in, but it's going to be easy to take out like that. The battery cable's now removed, and that's how simple it was. So basically I just lifted it, so the glue unstuck a little bit, and it came right out. All right, so the same thing going back in. Might be a little interesting with that sticky glue trying to get it tucked back in there, but we still had to remove the fan, and the reason being is this ribbon cable right here, which is the center of the battery one, we have to unplug. But the good news, don't have to remove the heatsink, don't have to remove the motherboard, at least not so far, and I'm pretty sure we're not going to have to. So I'm going to continue on now. I'm going to get this unplugged, and we're going to see if we can get the frame out of the case with the, I think there's 6 screws, I forget. I'll look at the iFixit page and we'll come back and review. Okay, on this cable, unlike this cable, where the black bar that you lift up, you just lift it up with a pair of tweezers, this one's in the front. So you have to lift it, and then the cable easily unplugged. There's no sticky tape on that one. So this one's in the front where the ribbon cable is. You just flip that little guy up. But this one was on the back. So just so you know the difference. And we now have the battery fully unplugged from the motherboard. And we're going to continue on. Okay, I can now tell the frame is loose. So per the iFixit, there are 4 screws that hold the whole frame to the case. One right here, One where this black plastic hole is, the other one where that same black plastic hole is near the ribbon cable, and then the one right here. You'll see it's two different sets of screws. So these smaller ones, I haven't measured their length yet. I'm going to write them down. They go where the metal is, metal frame part is. These two longer, thicker, more larger diameter screws go where the hole is. But as you can see, my frame is now loose in the Oculus. See that? I can push it in and out. All right, so now we're going to try to pull this out and swing it so that we don't pull on this Wi-Fi antenna. As a matter of fact, I'm going to unclip it from here and get it out from this metal. And we're going to see if we can swing it out and access the battery, okay? Stay tuned. Okay, like I said, my video is to show you all the little things. So I missed one ribbon cable, and it's this one here. It works just like the one we did up here. The lift is in the back, and this one had no sticky tape, but this is the volume control, and that's staying in the case, so we need to unplug that and get it out of the way as well. Then I think I should be able to just lift this frame out. I'll keep going and review once I either get it out or tell you what else needs to happen. One more cable over here, same deal. There appears to be a sensor. It's going to be hard to see right down there. I'm not sure what that is, but it looks like some kind of sensor board. Maybe when I get it out, I'll find out. But that ribbon cable comes up to here, so we must remove that one as well. All right, here we go once again to try to get the frame out, but we're getting to the point where pretty sure I've got everything disconnected that needs to be disconnected. And voila, it came right out after that last ribbon cable. Little fidgety, you kind of be careful and just, you know, because it tries to bump on all these components around here. So but it came right out. Again, the only thing holding it, so be careful, is the Wi-Fi antenna. You can see it's got a copper tape strip for noise control right here, I guess. And again, in order to unplug that, you got to remove the motherboard. And that's what I was trying to avoid. So as you see, we've got it. And I can't show you right now, but the battery's right under here. 6 screws hold it in. So I'm going to flip the whole thing over and show you how to do battery removal. And we now are at the point where we've done the minimal amount of disassembly to get at the battery. Boy, Oculus, you certainly could have built this. You could have put a door or something in here to allow the change of that battery or something. But geez Louise, what a bunch of take apart. Needless to say, you know, I am engineering type. Actually, I am an engineer, but I've had phones to change the screen or battery in a phone harder than this was. So while there's a lot of tiny little ribbon cables, it's not that big a deal now that I know exactly what to do. As a matter of fact, now that I know how to do this and what to take apart, I could probably do a battery in an Oculus in under 30 minutes now that I've done it. Anyway, let's get this flipped out, get the battery out, put the new battery in, and I'm not going to do a video on reassembly unless I run into little weird things. Anything I run into that I think you should know, I will video. But anyway, let's take a look at that final step. Okay, so this is interesting. That little middle ribbon cable, you know, all that thing is the Hall effect sensor or sensor. So when you put the Oculus to your face, it knows you did and it powers up. It's got nothing to do with the battery, but it just happens to be mounted to the battery. So that's all this is. It's just where the sensor, you know, when we first unplugged the front face around the lenses and we unscrewed that and had to unplug it, that's where this plugs in, and then this plugs into the motherboard. So for some reason they made it part of the battery case. Crazy, 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 but that's all that is. So what a hassle just to get at that. We had to remove the fan. Well, not that big a deal. The fan wasn't that hard to remove. Anyway, there's 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 up front in the corners, and out comes this battery, and we'll install the new one. Okay, just to follow up, there are not 6 screws. There's only 4. 2 on the front and 2 in the corners. The 2 in the middle actually are what hold the head strap clip that a lot of people break. So I'd have to go back and review my video to see if you can get at this without tearing the mid frame out. Maybe you can. So this might be easy to replace. I'm going to have to go back and review. I know some people have broken this and said, well, oh, what do I do? And it might be easy to replace, but my God, if you got to tear down this far to replace that, I wouldn't even do it. But I'm going to have to go back and look at my video, or when I reassemble, I'll come back and revisit what it takes to replace this. If it only takes removing the faceplate around the lenses to get at the screws for this, that would be an easy fix if someone broke it. Anyway, battery's out. We're going to put the new battery in. And at this point, I'm done with this video. Unless, as I'm assembling, I come across something like difficulty putting a connector back in or routing something, I will finish up with that and just show you those. Again, I want to show you the things that these other iFixit pages and videos are not showing you. The devil in the details, right? So the devil in the details is you don't have to remove the heatsink and the motherboard to get at the battery. You just got to unplug a bunch of stuff. And the amount of screws wasn't that bad. But again, on reassembly, anything I run into, I will continue on with the video. Otherwise, this video is done. Have a good one. So I am going to talk about reassembly just to remind you cables. So again, you want to get all the cables hooked up and screw the frame down. Last thing I'd like to see you do is forget to plug in a cable, something not work, and have to tear it apart again. So I'm going to start at the top. The ribbon cable for the face sensor, speaker, the cable that comes down here for the power button, the Wi-Fi antenna, get it rerouted, get it, again, the shielding is removed off the, I had to peel this black tape. You'll see that the insulation is removed right where it clips onto the frame here. Get that inserted where there's no insulation, because it's obviously grounding the antenna. You've got the ribbon cable for the volume control, get that plugged in. You've got the ribbon cable for that sensor that was down in there, not sure what that was. We went ahead and plugged in the power jack and earphone jack onto this. Again, be careful. Do not seat that crooked. Get it lined up. It should just go right down easy. Do not press hard to force that. You mess that jack up, you're done. Then you got the other earphone or speaker. We're not hooking up this antenna yet, and the battery gets plugged in last. So don't forget all of the cables that I just went through. Make sure they're all plugged in. Then put your screws back in. By the way, the screws there were two smaller diameters. Those were 6.35 millimeters long, and then in the ends here, and then on the corners there were the thicker screws that were 7.75 millimeters long. Now I'm going to tell you, if you put all your screws together, by the way, it might be nice just to, when you take the screws out, just put them, separate them, right? But it's not a big deal. There's not that many different ones. But there actually is one other 7.75 screw, and that was what held on the frame top, this top. And it was right in the middle. When you go back for my unassembly, you'll see. So if you're going, hey, what's this third 7.75 millimeter screw that's the same diameter? That's what it is. It's for way later in a reassembly. All right, so I did want to touch on reassembly just to remind you not to miss a cable. All right, especially this middle one right here for your face sensor. Won't have fun if you got to tear it apart to get back at that. All right. Anyway, I'm going to continue reassembly, and this may be the end of the video. If there's something else I want to talk about, I will. By the way, I want to say something. I have a pair of these that are lit, so you can see close-up stuff. Recommend it. I also have an eye loop set. You got to remember, a lot of the pictures and stuff online didn't show some of these details I'm showing you. So how to pop the connector off. Where the little lift is. This one's in the back. That one's we're at the ribbon cable side. So these little eye loops are handy. So if you need them, I'd recommend having something like that. Helps you with, especially getting these cables seated. Let me pull one out again. If you look, you want to make sure that Oculus seems to have taken and put in an ink mark to show if there's a gap like that. But there's two little tabs on each of the side of the ribbon cable. They should be almost all the way in and all the way up against the connectors. So make sure that if yours are painted, that you don't have a gap when you plug them back in, so you know they're seated all the way. All right. Anyway, reassembly. Okay, just following up on reassembly. We got the Bluetooth module back in. I guess it's Bluetooth. Anyway, it's what one of the other videos said. Anyway, we ran the cable. Again, this has the insulation stripped where it clips onto the frame, and then put that on straight and level. Do not push down unless that connector's totally level. If it's tipped or tipped back, you will damage that connector. So get it level, use your tweezers or whatever you can do. Once it's level and it's centered on that, snap it down. So the other reason I'm doing this video is these covers for the camera. You know, they popped off while I was pulling the motherboard out. Thank God I had, because I was shooting video, thank God I had it. But this is the orientation, these two holes. Now there's only one pin, and the pin goes in this hole. I don't know why there's two holes in this cover. My God, that is filthy too. Anyway, and over here we only got one pin, so they're not reversible. You can't put this one over there and that one over there. So I just wanted to show you how they go. Again, on the plastic, there's a little pin that goes in the hole of this to keep it aligned. All right. These bottom cameras didn't have any. They're part of the front cover. Anyway, while you got them out, you might clean them up. I probably will take that one back out and clean it up. All right. Anyway, so we are almost done with reassembly. Okay, just to follow up, it's all back together and working perfectly. No issues whatsoever. I put it on the charger. The new battery came at about 40% charge. Didn't take long, hit 100. Works like a champ. No issues with any of the cameras or anything not working. Everything's working great. I'll just touch on this a minute. I did, putting this faceplate around the lenses back on, that little ribbon cable that clips onto that connector at the battery. I had a hard time getting that back in the connector, and the reason being is the new battery also came with new foam tape, double-side tape, and every time I went to stick it in, the tape would grab the connector or the ribbon cable, and I just couldn't get it in right because it was just too sticky. Oculus puts tape on all these connectors, so if you drop the unit or whatever, they don't easily just bang and come unplugged. I think that's rare anyway, because these are all locking connectors. But what I did is I peeled off that double-side tape off the new battery, and any of the remnants left on the ribbon cable. I plugged it in, and then what I did is I just cut a piece of sticky tape once it was plugged in and stuck the ribbon cable down onto the battery frame, or the frame, just to make it secure. Do you have to do that? Probably not. I mean, this thing is so easy to remove that if you did drop it and that ribbon cable came unplugged, which you know it would, because when you put your face into the Oculus and it doesn't turn on, it means it's not picking up that sensor. All right. Anyway, just letting you know that that was a little harder to get in because it's a small connector and you've got this face plate sitting here. One of the things I recommend is the ribbon cable's kind of bent, doubled over, is straighten out the ribbon cable so you get a little more room and it isn't trying to pop up while you're trying to get it in the connector. So kind of straighten it out, get it plugged in, locked down, and then fold it back over when you go to put this on. So that was the only kind of hang up. Took me a little bit to get that ribbon cable hooked up. Anyway, again, everything's working great. So just a summary on the battery. Do I think it's easy? I don't think. I've done phones that were harder, so I don't think it's not easy, but it's not super hard. If you go on iFixit, they say tear down on this is considered hard. Now, remember, in their article, they're removing the motherboard, the heat sink and all that in the motherboard. We were able to change the battery without doing that, which is a big plus. I would say it's just a bunch of small screws. Keep track of them. If you're comfortable with little small ribbon cables that aren't that bad because they all have a positive latching system, and you've got the tools, little small tweezers, the T2 you're going to need, a little small Phillips. Other than that, it's just removing a bunch of screws, unplugging a bunch of stuff, pulling the frame out, putting the new battery in, and plugging everything back in. I literally had no issues. So I'd consider this medium, not easy, but medium. Anyway, that's my battery change video. You know, I'm not a video pro. I'm using my phone and holding it, as you see. So I'm not a video pro. I wasn't planning to do a total pro job. I don't have the equipment to do a total pro job. But I hope this video certainly helps anyone that wants to change their own battery. I certainly went into the details of certain things that other videos don't show. And hope the video was helpful. Enjoy.